And with that, we segue into maybe a little bit more chat about downs, about failure, so to speak, because obviously it's nice to hear all the success and all the upsides of everything that's going on. But especially if you're an entrepreneur, you can hear, like you just heard from Molly, that sometimes life is rough on you. And in the next segment, we're going to talk with some leading CEOs about if they still make mistakes and whether they want to share a story with us. But before we start with that, we thought it would be a nice segue to show our own little mistakes, our little SMR TV 2015 blooper video. Enjoy.
So the hard part now starts. We were, in fairness, I think, whoops. I'm going to get somebody to fix that for me very shortly.
And that is how it goes with live TV. I just had 3 students lined up to talk to me, but they're all gone.
Always a good mistake, first day in the studio.
So let's see. I don't even have my cameraman on loose. Otherwise, I could just walk out and find him.
So we have to be really strong in our message of, why choose us as a career.
And that's part of the message.
You have a question?
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, that's your role here. Well, let's put. I see some interesting. Finn and Niels, please join me, because this is how it goes, right? We're live, and on my far right, your left, we have. We have someone I wasn't expecting. I was actually expecting Alexander. Thank you very much for joining here in the studio during the past 2 days. I very much enjoyed it. I hope to see you again. And keep tweeting #ISMRTV or #I'm a proud market researcher. Thank you very much.
And can I just add one last point, which is... Okay.
Well, so that was last year. Hopefully this year we might have a few bloopers too. I haven't seen too many yet, but it's day 2 and that's always when stuff starts to go wrong. So I'm joined by a very interesting bunch of people. On my right here I have Sally Joubert, from CEO of Luma in Australia. Next to her is Pravin Shakar. You're the creator-in-chief of Kreya in India. And remotely joining us on Skype, John, are you there?
I'm here.
Hey, there's John Karen live from London. Great to have you back here at SMR TV Channel 3. We want to create a little storytelling session, a confession-style session of these leaders in the market research industry, and to check whether they still make mistakes. Just a quick check. Brevin, do you still make mistakes?
Oh, quite a bit.
Quite a bit. And how about you, Sally? All the time. John, do you still ever make mistakes?
I'm surrounded by my staff who are all nodding like this.
All right. Well, would you kick us off and share a great story about how you totally got it wrong recently? We'll listen carefully.
Well, actually, I was going to tell the story of Brain Juicer, because actually it's not a bad place to start. It was 17 years ago, can you believe? Millennium madness. And I decided that online research was a great idea, and that basically taking little games from psychology and improving the way that we ask questions would also be a great idea. So I came up with this lovely idea and called it CreativeToolbox.com. Okay, built the website, did this game. It was an association game that shrinks play with their patient. I say mother, you say, I say, and it's an associative network. I thought this was going to be huge. 1 year later, not one client, not one project. This is a year later, okay? I'm paying the software developers. I'm not really paying myself. And so it was like, okay, all right. When things go wrong, you basically have to double up or kind of compromise. So it was like, let's change the name, and that's where Brain Juicer came after actually a drunken conference with a friend of mine, and we came up with Brain Juicer, and basically it was one of those names, it was polarized. People loved it and hated it in equal measure. And then I, basically did a kind of Survey Monkey, Hot and Not, the Mind Reader. There were all these little plug-and-play techniques. This, I thought, would be brilliant. This is going to be, how can the market resist? How can people resist this? And 9 months later, still not a client, not a sausage. This was the point at which my wife said, now look, darling, I know you're a genius, but how about getting a proper job? Could you really, maybe? And so we agreed that I'd give it 3 more months and that was when I won Nike. They were doing Run London for the very first time. They never really do much research, but they loved the mind reader, and we did it. And it told them what people felt about the run. And frankly, once you got Nike as a client, the rest starts to roll.
Yeah.
Here we are 15 years later, after which I have made so many mistakes, many more, by the way, many, many, many more failures of things we've built and launched than the things that have worked. Just saying.
All right, John, thank you very much for this open-heartedness of how your story got started. I must say, I'm quite impressed if you could stretch it for about 2 years without a client. I mean, you must have a lucky start. Thanks for sharing. Bear with us for a little bit. We'll see if we can kind of elaborate with the three of us together. Let's first have to say, let's hear what Sally has to say. Can you take camera too and actually share a story with us?
I can, and thank you for the opportunity. It was quite hard to pick which failure to talk about. But what I want to share is a story that started about 8 years ago, where we were obsessed with doing everything faster. So it would have been at SMR, it would have been at places like this, with a lot of discussion about how can we do things fast. And so we launched and talked about this and developed, talked to technology companies, looked at every which way we could to find something that would be able to deliver what we were trying to do. So what we're trying to do is to get an online platform that could go from, setting out your survey to what I would say is going to sleep and then coming back and having all your results in this wonderful reportal. So we found a company, we developed some incredible software, but there were certainly challenges in that. So, it was early days with this technology. What we're so used to with flexibility and all those things could not be done. So as researchers, we had a picture of what we wanted to do. As technologists, they were going, well, no, that's not possible, this isn't possible. But what we did, we pulled something together. We cut out so many questions so we could do everything fast. So we did a lot of analysis to get rid of things, and we ended up with a product. Similar to John, it was then a matter of, hang on, does anyone actually want this? We'll talk about being fast, and this was 5 years ago, but we didn't take into account all the other things. So what we had to do was suddenly say, no, well, when we talk to clients about it, they say, well, that's great, but we still want to know this, we still want to know this. So then we went through a process of then rebuilding, adding back in the researcher. We couldn't just do things automatically with just text analysis. We needed the brains, we needed the researcher, and really a lot of our clients would use this reportal, but only to quickly get that information, and then they would still want us back to consult. So it was a journey. It was one of those things where you get very excited, you think this is going to be wonderful, you're so excited to see the technology, and then the reality of you've got to be flexible. You've got to repivot and say, okay, well now we've got something, and today it's taken off.
Well, thanks for sharing. And if you look back at this probably costly venture, how would you summarize the biggest learning here?
Well, the biggest learning is we didn't collaborate enough at the start. We were so excited ourselves with our ideas and what we thought would be possible that it would have been, in hindsight, better to get a few more clients on board at the start, talk about not just go for the faster. So it was much more, and this is, times have changed, but now it's it's faster, it's better, and it's cheaper, but to actually look at all of those things, not just faster.
That's a great takeaway. Thanks for sharing, Sally. Pravin,
yes.
How is that life in India? Tell us about how to make mistakes over there. What's your story?
I'm a parallel entrepreneur. I'm going to talk about one idea and the 15-year journey of that idea.
All right, go ahead.
I'll start off with what Gandhi said. First they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, and then you win. So I'm talking about 2000, 2005, 2010, and 2015. 2000, I had the core of an idea and started creating customer databases, which now is called online panels. 2000, and India at that particular point, right now we rule, but at that particular point it was back or beyond in terms of the digital dark ages. So at that particular point, we tried out an India inside-in approach. Like John, 6 months, 12 months, no client. However, it was a parallel entrepreneurship, so we already had something good going, and this was an extension. we had to close shop because the idea was stillborn at that particular point. The market was not ready. The clients were definitely not ready. We just got ignored. 2005 was the second version of the same idea called eResearch India. We came up, online had just started picking up. We tried an outside-in approach because in US and Europe panels had started working. We said, why not India? Why not India? Because from ignorance, it moved over to resistance. We were laughed out when we made client pitches, so the outside-in did not work, and the first version was stillborn, the second version it did not take off. But you know how entrepreneurs are, we just love talking about a particular idea where we know it has that merit, to the extent that my wife turned around and said, either you do something about it or you shut up. Yeah.
Just like in John's case, we hear him laughing,
Yes.
I think.
Very powerful.
Yes. So 2010 was when Kriya was born with the same idea, but with a specific healthcare focus. It started taking off. 2015, with the same base of an online panel, we've launched another entity called Insight, which is into agile research. So the journey of 15 years, from a digital dark age, the same idea, underwent several pivoting or avatars, so to speak, to get ready for the market. And 2010, 2015 was an inside-out approach, where we had outside clients come in because everybody wanted to research India, except the Indian clients. Yeah.
Exactly. Wow. Thank you for sharing. And again, just to summarize in one word, what would you say is the key learning here?
The first two ideas, we had the best business plan in the world, but we didn't do much.
Okay.
So my key message to all the young folks out there is plan just about enough, but don't wait for the best plan to execute. Go right ahead, and something I read on Facebook is a true entrepreneur jumps off the cliff and either builds an airplane or a parachute on the way down.
Yeah, exactly.
But you got to do.
You gotta keep doing.
Yeah.
And John, if we go back to you for a second, because it's a great story how you keep persistent for 2 years, but then Nike comes along. Would you say that's luck, or is that building a parachute?
Yeah, it is luck, and I don't know if you can hear the music in the background. I've just realised at 5 o'clock in our office, the music starts. So
No, it doesn't bother us. We can hear you clear.
The mistake, that's what it's all about. Yeah, it is luck, but you have to work and work and work, and then you have to, you have to ride your luck when you get it, and be grateful for it. It's a bit like actors, they get a break in their, in a particular series that becomes a hit series, and then they sort of say daft things like, oh, I'm bored of that role, I want to break out, because I'm brilliant. It's like, no, it's a lucky break. Be grateful. Be appreciative and, recognize it.
All right. Well, to sum up, I think we have some very powerful lessons here. So it's about persistence and make sure that you get the opportunity to build the parachute. It's about talking to clients early, right? Yes. It's one of the biggest takeaways. Yes, you have strong entrepreneurial ideas, but you have to validate, right? Yes. And it's about doing,
Absolutely.
and then doing a little bit more.
Well, I would even go one step further, Gerd. Customers, the first clients are important. I would put it through, saying, I'm interested in the girl, I'll have to find if she's interested in me or not. But if she says no, you just can't keep proposing all the time. You roam around and you will find other clients who like you or like your product. Exactly. And then you go ahead and sign up.
So it's persistence in your execution, but not per se in your direction.
No, persistence in the execution in the right field.
Exactly.
If this field doesn't work, switch it over.
Yeah, and then admitting that you haven't quite got it right and not persisting for too long.
Yeah.
Well, I want to go in that a little bit, admitting that you don't get it quite right. I talked to John a little bit about this last week because this is called learning from failure.
All right.
And I think it's very brave and very cool that you go on record here and admit that you still make mistakes and make brilliant. But like John made a comment last week, you're now the CEOs of big companies. A lot of people look at you. How can you create, or what do you guys do to create a culture where failure is actually okay? Because it's easy to say we all learn from failure, but now let's do it.
Well, John? We've embedded two things, really, really simple, which everyone knows. The first is that the paradox of success is you need failure to achieve it.
Right.
Yeah, you actually, if you're doing anything original, anything unique, you will fail if it's of any interest many, many, many times before you get it right. And so actually that's part of the process. I would almost go as far to say that the second part of it is there's nothing worse than a great start. Okay? I mean, I know that sounds sort of, kind of contrarian, but it's kind of true. I tell you, the products that we've built that just flew, clients loved the sound of them, and they are no longer in the business. They literally burnt bright like a firework and just sort of turned to nothing.
They weren't sustainable.
They weren't really sustainable. They were a bit glitzy. They were a bit kind of like on the surface they looked good, and actually underneath, there was something missing. Whereas the ones that are driving our profitability are the ones that took, frankly, 2 years or more of persistence and learning and, sort of iteration before they popped. And I love Pravin's, they ignore you, laugh at you, fight with you. I think you have to kind of go through that process. Yeah.
But John, are you basically now saying that as a CEO, you get hesitant when you see instant success? You're like, my gut feeling says something is wrong here?
I am actually suspicious about it. And it's you take it because you think, okay, well, maybe this time it'll just be great, win-win. But, time after time after time, it's actually not a good indicator, which is a hard thing to say to people.
So let's take it to my guest here. How's that at your company? I mean, what are you doing to create a culture where failure is okay? Or is failure okay at Crea?
I'm okay with success. I'm okay with, but I completely concur with what John said. Yes. Not taking a decision, Garrett, is the worst decision you can take. So from a culture perspective, you should allow for failure, let the folks reporting in take their own decisions. Most of the time what happens is you are afraid of failure, you don't take a decision, which is the worst decision you could take. Yeah. So go ahead, take the jump. If it fails, fine. We'll figure out why it failed, make sure we don't repeat it, but then go ahead and fail more.
And what do you do as a leader to create, to force these decisions? Is that how meetings go?
We do not have annual appraisals in the company.
Okay.
We've knocked that out. There's no specific work time. There's an objective, you meet it. If you fail, you own up. We'll celebrate failure as well. So there's a cake cutting when we have a new client win. There's a cake cutting when we screw up.
Okay, wow. But that is then really part of the company.
It takes time. So I was a traditional entrepreneur. Now it's taken 10, 15 years, Gert. So you just can't jump in like that.
You can't watch Channel 3 and just start your company like that tomorrow. No. Okay. Yeah. But it's a pinpoint on the horizon.
It is. It's not perfect. You need to coach the people that it's okay to fail, because where I come from in India, there's a stigma associated with failure. So if you're a failure, nobody wants to talk to you. That is changing. The environment is changing.
Wow. No, and so I'd say, and at Luma, we don't have that stigma that it will fail. It's more like we will really encourage people to follow that idea. So if they do have an idea and it might not work, but we will really encourage them to think about it, work on it, talk to clients about it, and then try and build something.
And the people who got an idea that didn't work just leave the company, or
no, because they've seen what happens.
Do you cut the cake? I mean, there could be something in between. How do you guys deal with it? Yeah, I like the idea too. Yeah.
No, we just go, okay, well that didn't work. What can we do? How can we change it? What can we learn from that? But not focus on the fact that it didn't work. It was the fact that they had to go.
It's a learning experience.
Really try.
Yeah.
And that's where we're going to get that sort of a new idea, something new. It's only going to happen from trying something or not being afraid to, because if we all sat there and said, oh no, well that's not going to work, nothing would happen.
Exactly.
Yeah, Sally, I so agree with that. I mean, I make a point when I get a chance of, when people join the company, of telling them some of the war stories of the disastrous client meetings or something. I have actually been thrown out of a couple of client, debriefs, I'm afraid, and they make for good stories in hindsight. It wasn't pleasant at the time, but at least it shows that if the top, if you kind of make it, these things happen. If you're trying to do the right thing for the right reasons, it won't always go well, but at least it's that spirit, and you encourage that in everyone.
All right, so I guess this is a very powerful message to any industry leaders or anybody working at a company and who wants to forward this video to their leaders. Because what you're both saying, this culture should be kind of formalized, but also you as leaders have a very strong role model, right? And like John's saying, if you share the war stories as soon as a new hire comes in, let's just explore that a little bit before we round up. New hires, how do you instill this culture? How do you guys do that at your company?
It is difficult because they come in from a cultural context where you're supposed to succeed from
exactly.
when
at
you're
school,
born,
you have
you've
to score
got to
A's,
succeed, you've got to excel. And if you do not, they equate it with mediocrity, which is not the case. It is a tough call, Geert. I'm taking up the war story thing from John because that's something I can incorporate right up.
Yeah.
But we got to just reiterate the message that it's okay to fail. It's not okay not to try. It's not okay just to sit down. So go ahead and try, and let's talk about it. I'd love to learn from your mistakes. So next time I catch up John, I'm probably going to take him out for a drink and grab a bunch of
share
his
war
stories. Yeah, especially
yes,
where he's
please.
been thrown out.
Yeah, exactly.
And would you, Sally,
And
what
so
do you...
I guess when new people start, we really just try and instill that things about our culture that are different. That when we are not structured, we are not a big corporate with sort of plans and the the KPIs and that sort of thing. We want people to come in to find a passion and go for it, because that's really
And
again,
that's
where
the first
those-
message they get when they come in.
And we do share our war stories as well, and but they will be part of that journey as well. So we will try and instill in them from the start to have a go, to come up with an idea, and we'll go for it.
Wow.
And we talk about things like you can. If you want to present a paper overseas, go for it. We'll support
try.
you. If you want to talk to a client about this, go for it. That's how we approach it.
Well, this is great news, yes.
The last one that I would like to tell is from my culture. It's very common for the newbies to try and suck up to the management. So we pretty much say that feedback is not flattery. So when I ask for feedback, you're supposed to find out what is wrong and what I can improve. If I want flattery, I'll ask you for it. But then once the message gets across, they're open to turn around and say, Praveen, good, but I think you screwed up in that part, and this is how I would have done it, which is a good way to look at it.
Pretty scary as a youngster, but if you can get that culture, it must be very powerful. All right, well, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much for being so open-hearted with us. If you just tuned in, I have Sally Joubert, the CEO of Luma in Australia with me, Praveen Shakar, the Chief Creator, I should say, at Creya in India. And we had remotely live from London, the Chief Brain Juicer. Seems that you guys had dinner before.
No, I've modeled it on John, let me be honest on that.
Chief Brain Juicer.
And Geert, the next time you get John on, make sure he plays the saxophone.
Exactly. Well, next time will probably be next year in Amsterdam, which is a home game for John. So we'll all meet up over there.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here, and enjoy the
Lovely to
Congress.
meet you.
And,